Another way that we are able to monitor otters is by the use of camera trapping. So these are remote cameras that can be placed at areas that you want to monitor otter activity. They're infrared, so they can pick up activity during the night. They're minimal disturbance, and most camera traps you can probably leave out recording for about a week. The camera traps themselves, you can actually set them at different trigger times, whether you want short pieces of video with some pictures or just some pictures. You can also have the time and date stamp on them. So when you're reviewing the camera trap footage at home, you can see clearly when it was activated, and then you can see on the screen what was actually activating it. So we use these with otters in many ways. We'll use them to determine otters' commuting routes. So if we want to see if an otter's travelling across a particular part of land or area, and we want to know if a future development, for instance, might affect it, we can use camera traps to pick them up as they're moving through their territories. The other key thing in camera traps is being able to use them to identify otters' places of rest. These include holts. Holts is what you'd call an otter's home. And so we can use camera traps to determine if that hole in the bank over there is a hole in the bank, or if it's actually an otter holt. Sometimes you might actually find that it's not an otter holt, but a fox or a badger is using it. So they can be used across multiple different species. Now, what we have to be careful of is when we find something that we think might be an otter holt or its resting place, is how we go about camera trapping it. Although a hole in the bank is just a hole in the bank until it's proven to be an otter holt, a fox hole, a badger hole, we still need to take consideration that it might be a very sensitive otter breeding area, for instance. So what we don't want to do is cause too much disturbance, and so unsettling a potential resident otter. So this is why we have good practice when we're camera trapping. So what we'll do to begin with is we'll camera trap the trails leading to the hole. This means that we're not impeding directly on the potential otter holt or resting place, but we're simply camera trapping the paths leading to it and from it. And from this we can pick up if we've got an otter coming or going. If we've got a development going on and we really need to know if that is an otter holt or not, or a resting place, because they're protected under European law still for the time being, and the Wildlife and Countryside Act, we need evidence of an otter going in or out. So in this scenario, we'll use our experience as an otter worker, an ecologist, and actually not place the camera traps in too much of an invasive way. And what I mean by that is not putting a camera trap in the hole, not putting it at the entrance where an animal is going to trip up over it, but trying to set it a bit of a way back so that we can still get the captures of it being used and we've still got that footage. Now, if we're monitoring a known otter holt, it's really important to keep some distancing. So the recommendations from South Wales Otter Trust, myself, is we place a camera trap at 5 metres from a holt that is not a maternity or breeding holt. So you've got a single otter using it. And then if we've got a maternity holt, we need to place it a bit further back. We can place it 10 metres back and still get the footage. There's no need to move closer. So why is this, particularly with a maternity holt? Well, an otter bitch wants to keep her cubs hidden. She doesn't want them being found. She doesn't want them being found by people, by dogs, but just as importantly, she doesn't want them being found by another otter, particularly a dog otter. If he finds her with her cubs, he knows that if he kills the cubs, she'll come back into season and he can breed with her. So she doesn't want to be disturbed. Sometimes I've been placing camera traps near sensitive areas, and then when I've come to review the footage, the first bits of footage I've got is the otters coming up to the camera trap and putting their nose to it saying, what's this? This wasn't here yesterday. So to me, that is an element of disturbance. If the otter's clearly coming up to it and investigating it, then it's something new and it's caused some disturbance. What we want to do is avoid the otter bitch becoming rattled, thinking she's been found, and then deciding that because someone's been there, she's going to move her cubs. So what she'd do in that case is she'll take one cub at a time, take them off to another halt, which could be quite some distance, hide the cub, come back, get the next cub, and so on and so on. But then we've got the danger of a dog walker or a person finding the otter cub and saying, hey, I've found an abandoned otter cub, let's take it and get it to a rescue centre. Now, all of that could have been avoided by just having some simple common sense when placing the camera traps and not taking the risk of disturbing them too much. Another thing that I've noticed when I've been placing camera traps is otters will often sniff the ground where I've been walking. So they're picking up the scent left from my footwear. Again, because they're picking that up, yes, it's changed their behaviour, and that is potentially a level of disturbance. I strongly urge, if you want to camera trap otters, do so for acknowledgement and enjoyment by camera trapping sprinting points that are not resting places and they're not halts, but otters will visit them to drop their messages off. If you wish to camera trap an otter halt, you need a licence. Here in Wales, you'd have to apply for an NRW species licence to disturb otters, because you're putting a camera trap on a halt or a resting place that is protected. By the way, the penalties for breaking the law with this is up to 6 months in prison and or an unlimited fine. So now if you're doing this as part of a development programme, you'll apply for an NRW protected species licence to disturb otters. This means within that development scenario, you can disturb them as to what the licence conditions are. Now that only covers you for that one site. Many people think because they've held one of those licences, they can go wherever they want and disturb otters because they've held a licence. No, you can't. You need a separate licence for each occasion unless you have a personal otter licence. So just to summarise that, if you've held a European protected species licence to disturb otters for one situation, that is what you're covered for. If you hold an NRW personal otter licence for disturbance, then you've got a much broader scale to disturb things, disturb these situations. So when you're out there, if you're a professional, you're an ecologist, you're a land manager, you're a conservationist, and you want to clarify an otter halt, remember the distances, remember your responsibilities, remember if you're going to be too close, do you need a protected species licence to disturb it? I hope that's helpful, thank you. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe, add a like, and then put some comments if you need to know any more information, and we'll endeavour to get back to you. Thank you for watching.